listening to SiriusXM Insight. And this is Tell Me Everything with John Fugelsang.
Here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that people in the great state of Iowa wake up and realize that the Joni Ernstification of your state does not necessarily have to be a foregone conclusion. My friends, I grew up loving Gary Kroeger on SNL, a terrific comic. I used to love when he and Julie Louis-Dreyfus did Donnie and Marie together. And now, as we've reported on this show before, he is actually running for Congress for the 1st District of Iowa in the great state as a Democrat. And it's really, really always a pleasure to welcome candidate Gary Kroeger back to SiriusXM Insight. Hello, sir.
Well, hello. I have to tell you, John, I live for your introductions of me. They are the greatest. Now, I have two things. First of all, the caller is absolutely correct because I am old enough to remember 1968. It's actually when my political consciousness was awakened. You know, Vietnam, that particular election, and that chronology that he gave is exactly correct.
Exactly. And you know, again, the people who were propping up Nixon, guys like Rumsfeld, guys like Cheney, of course, just stayed there through the Ford administration, got to go on bombing and murdering innocent people in Cambodia. And then they eventually ascended the highest levels of government because millions of us are just asleep at the wheel. And, you know, I know there's a lot of good folks in Iowa. There's a lot of open-minded people in Iowa who are really, really tired of business as usual. And, Gary, it's really a pleasure to hear about how you are taking on the status quo in that state.
Well, thank you, because that's exactly what I'm running on, is the fact that I am different. Yes, I've been conscious of politics my whole life, like you have, like all of you have. You know, that's why we talk about it today, is because we've been actively interested our whole lives, but maybe it took us until our 50s, or you're in your 40s, until we
50s
said, you know
over
what,
here.
I'm going to take that half century of experience now, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the best I can for the public good. I'm going to be generous and say the next 50 years of my life. I'm in a primary here, and I have formidable opponents. Pat Murphy, who lost this race last year, looks like he's getting in. Ravi Patel, fine young man, dropped out. And Monica Vernon is a machine that just keeps on running. But I must say, to your point, they are the status quo Democrats. This is a slightly blue district. This was Bruce Braley's district for 8 years. It's going to go blue. So I say to the people of Iowa, why wouldn't we put in the most progressive of the candidates who, I said the other day at a Central Committee, I was marching for gay rights 40 years ago. I had an ERA Now placard 40 years ago. This is my DNA.
Exactly.
I didn't just come to this and go, oh, you know what? But look, I wore my Eugene McCarthy button and then my Hubert Humphrey button to school in 1968.
I'm guessing you are a card-carrying member of the ACLU.
Well, I'm a card-carrying supporter, that's for sure. You know, these issues haven't really changed. But what happens, to your point again, is that we become complacent. We allow things to happen. We let the tough guys win too often. We let rationality, common sense, and education fall by the wayside.
Well, exactly. And, you know, I'm not like here saying rah-rah liberals all the time, but I will say that liberals are the ones, historically, who've been right about everything. 10 years ago, I was
called a referendum, yes, on how we've been correct.
You know, 10 years ago, I was called a liberal because I supported gay marriage, I supported medical marijuana, I thought invading Iraq was a bad idea, and I thought George Bush's economic policies were going to wreck the country. I was not a liberal. I was prematurely mainstream. And I think that there's a lot of people, you know, let's not forget Barack Obama's president because of the primary voters in the great state of Iowa who realized that Hillary Clinton wasn't a foregone conclusion and gave it to him. Gary, what's the temperature you're taking as you talk to voters in Iowa? Are they discouraged by the lack of magical rainbows and a pony under the Obama administration, or are people just looking for new ideas and realize that this guy's been hamstrung by a Congress that doesn't want any kind of reform?
Well, I would put us into three categories. One are Republicans that simply they've hated this administration and all things liberal from the beginning of time. The others are those in the middle who some of them are discouraged and they were hoping for more. But the ones that I'm talking to most of the time, these are the activists because I'm trying to win a Democratic primary, so I'm going to every county and I'm meeting the anywhere from 6 to 2 dozen activists. And they, by and large, are very supportive of the president, absolutely understand the lockstep obstructionism that he's had to face, and are very proud of the accomplishments. And in the last few weeks, particularly proud that the voices of reason, the understanding of the Supreme Court for justice, have issued these referendums on health care and rights.
Exactly.
And so those Iowans are very motivated. And those are the ones that I'm trying to win to say, we want Gary Kroeger, a true lifelong progressive, who not only has embraced these ideas his whole life, he has the ability now to move them forward. For example, a lot of people are saying, hey, okay, let go of gay marriage. We won. Well, no. We haven't won. Justice prevailed. Common sense prevailed. But we haven't won this because an equal and opposite counterreaction already has arisen.
Oh, yes, it has, Gary. You're right.
In 2009, the Iowa Supreme Court struck down the Defense of Marriage Act, simply saying we cannot put language into our Constitution, a document of freedom, that actually discriminates against people. That is unfair. But what happened then? The counterreaction threw 3 of those judges out for having made the correct decision. So we can never rest on this laurel and say, hey, okay, let's move on now to, other economic issues.
Sam Brownback just signed an executive order supposedly protecting religious people from having to not discriminate against gay people.
Meaning protecting Christians from having to actually act like Christians.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So but then again, gentlemen, this is why I'm doing this. We can never... The mission of progressivism is to continually be progressive. We can't just say, okay, we were progressive, now it's over. We always have to keep fighting this. This is why I like being a progressive Democrat. All of these issues are always relevant. People have said to me, well, Kroeger, pick your economic issue. Is it affordable education? Is it expanding the middle class? And I go, civil rights are there too.